Welcome, everybody, to the NFL show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for the NFL show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
I am doing good, and today we're going to continue our State of the Franchise episodes, and today we're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers, who last year, of course, went all the way to the Super Bowl. I believe there was somebody on our show back then that predicted they would win the NFC Championship, Sam.
Oh, was there? Was it you, by any chance?
It might have been. I don't know. I would think it probably was, since I'm the one that remembers it, and you don't.
Yeah, I think it probably would be you, Mike. You tend to get those prediction things right, but no, I don't entirely remember. I wasn't a huge fan of the 49ers going into it, but they really proved me wrong during the season.
Yeah, I was really mocked, and you and Anthony really, I think you called me a moron. And I
probably did once or twice. I'm sure Anthony probably did too.
You called me a moron?
I don't know. Wait, moron's maybe a bit of a stretch, but I probably said I disagreed significantly.
All right. Well, last year, the San Francisco 49ers, I think it's safe to say they dominated the NFC outside of a couple of close games with the Seattle Seahawks. When you look at the roster, they've lost a little bit on the defensive line with DeForest Buckner. I think they've added a little bit here and there. And I think the big question here is Jimmy Garoppolo a good enough quarterback to lead a team to a Super Bowl championship?
Well, I think what we saw last year. He's good enough to get them to the Super Bowl. I think you could win with an outstanding defense. My issue is I don't think that defense is phenomenal enough because it's not a generational type defense. It's not that kind of group that we're going to be remembering 10 years from now. It's not that kind of unit right now. So the defense isn't good enough to cover Jimmy Garoppolo's shortcomings. Jimmy Garoppolo and that offense are really kind of mediocre. I know they try to change some personnel around this offseason, but at the same point, Garoppolo is like around the middle of the pack kind of guy for me. I don't think he's a very special quarterback. And if we're really talking about like a clutch guy who you need to go out there and win a game for you, I don't know if Garoppolo is going to be that guy.
I thought Garoppolo going in was that guy. I think the problem was the way the offense was run, especially in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, which we've seen with Coach Shanahan before. So I think the big question going into this is how big of a Super Bowl hangover do you get, especially after being so close to winning a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think it could be significant for the 49ers this year. Just looking at their division, they're in a very tough division, probably the toughest in football. You got the Seattle Seahawks. You do have the Arizona Cardinals who are on the up and coming, and then you've got – I know the Rams taking a lot of steps back, obviously, but I think the Rams still play within that division fairly well. They tend to play games pretty close. So I think the 49ers are in a very tough spot this coming year. And honestly, I don't have a ton of faith in Kyle Shanahan. And like I said, I'm wavering on Jimmy Garoppolo, so I don't really know if there's enough for this team to go out and put up another 13-3 type season and get back to the playoffs soon. Or at least be a dominant team again and get back to a high seed in the playoffs.
Yeah, and when we look at their division, I think the Rams, I think we both agree, will be down. The Cardinals are interesting. Don't know if they can get it done right away. But the team that seems to be the biggest threat here is Seattle, who they split with last year in two great football games. And, I just think the difference between Russell Wilson and Jimmy Garoppolo could be the killer here. And I think Garoppolo is a very good quarterback. But I think it's possible Russell Wilson, if not the best quarterback in the NFL, has to be in the top three. And when you look at this is going to be a hell of a battle here to win the NFC West.
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't be shocked if they split again this coming year. But I think at the same time, when you look at the San Francisco 49ers, their defense got, I think, a little bit weaker this offseason. I feel like that's going to be a huge advantage to Seattle because the Seahawks don't have a tremendous defense to begin with. It's really about their offense. It's really about what Russell Wilson and Chris Carson can do to you. I think the Seahawks are going to be better this year offensively because they add a piece like Greg Olsen. They have a stacked tight end group. I think DK Metcalf will be better this coming year. So I think really this plays to Seattle's favor a little bit. What's happened this offseason, I think the Seahawks are in a good position to go out there and potentially sweep the 49ers within the division.
Yeah, but they did crush the Packers twice. You always got to like that. And like I said, the low of the season had to be the Super Bowl, which was a game that I think that they won all except the last probably 8 or 9 minutes of the game. And still, to me, I don't have a lot of faith in Kyle Shanahan. I think you look at what happened with Atlanta in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. I think you could see the same kind of thing happen here with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think the ridicule he took was unfair, Sam. This is a guy that really in his first complete season went 13-3 and took his team to the Super Bowl, and I think people forget that.
Yeah, sure. I think people, because we've heard about Jimmy Garoppolo now for probably the past 3 or 4 years. This was his third year in San Francisco this past season, so I think people maybe treat him a little bit more like a veteran than he is. It's really, like you're right. This really was his first full complete season. Before this point, I mean, he had 10 starts in his career, and he more than doubled that this past year. So I think people do get on Jimmy Garoppolo a bit too quickly. But at the same point, there were some plays down the stretch in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl in particular. If he had made those plays, they could have still been in the game. How does that excuse Kyle Shanahan for basically taking the ball out of Garoppolo's hands and kind of essentially blowing the game in that fourth quarter? No, absolutely not. But I still feel like if Garoppolo had made all the plays you'd expect him to lead quarterback, I think they still could have had a chance to win that game.
All right, but when you look at guys like Ben Roethlisberger, Russell Wilson, they won Super Bowls quickly in their 10 years in Pittsburgh and Seattle. It was done basically with great defense. And I think that Jimmy G compares favorably to both of those guys when you look at their first couple years in the league. Garoppolo completed nearly 70% of his passes last year. He ranked third in yards per attempt at 8.4, threw for 27 touchdowns. And this is a guy that outdueled Drew Brees in New Orleans. So I think that, I mean, people ripping Jimmy Garoppolo. I think we need to see more from him. I mean, I still need to see more from Patrick Mahomes. We've seen a lot of guys that were great for a year or two that kind of disappeared. But I think Garoppolo is being overplayed here. And I think that if this team comes up short, it's because the defense won't be quite as good. And the coaching is just not good enough. And that is my biggest fear here, that the coaching will not be good enough.
Yeah, I mean, even on the offensive side of the ball, you talk about play calling and things like that. I'm worried about what they're going to do this coming year. I think we can really see a situation where almost sort of like what happened with the Rams or even with the Falcons after a couple of years, where things just start falling apart and pieces just start falling away. And once you lose some of those star players, I mean, what do you have left? It's down to your coaching. It's down to your discipline, down to your schema. I don't know if they have that in San Francisco right now. And like I said, I'm not a big Kyle Shanahan guy. I understand people think he's an offensive genius, but at the same point, I mean, it wasn't the offense that won them 13 games last year. It just wasn't it. It was the defense that was really the major factor. So I think if this defense is worse this coming season, they still face the same quality of schedule, you could lose an extra 3 or 4 games.
Well, I think this, when you look at that defense, the thing that makes the defense go to me is Nick Bosa. When you looked at him, a lot of people were trying to compare him to his brother Joey, who was dominant for the LA Chargers. But then last season comes up, and Nick looks even better than Joey. I think Nick should have been the NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 2020, and I wouldn't be shocked if I feel the same way at the end of this season.
Yeah, I mean, really, with DeForest Buckner in my mind was maybe the guy going into the year because we hadn't seen Nick Bosa yet, but Nick Bosa did eventually take over. With him gone, I think it's clearly Bosa's turn to step up and be the superstar on this unit right now. The only other guy who's really an all-NFL caliber player was Richard Sherman, and he's another year older now. We saw him struggle a little bit dealing with speed in the Super Bowl, so I think he'll probably take a little bit of a step back. Bosa really is the engine on this defense. My concern, though, is there are pieces of that unit that just didn't perform last year or they're no longer there anymore. I'm just looking at like one more year of age, you lose DeForest Buckner. I'm just wondering how consistent will this defense be year to year? Will you be able to hold this together for 2 or 3 years, or will this be something that just falls apart this coming season?
Yeah, and the Niners did a great job, I think, of keeping Armstead, Jimmy Ward. That was awesome. But DeForest Buckner was traded for a first-round pick that was used to snag a cheaper replacement in Kinlaw, who I believe could be a Pro Bowler sooner rather than later. But it's kind of a big question here. And to me, Kinlaw being able to step in and replace Buckner without missing a beat could be the biggest key on this defense being extremely good yet again. And the other is Richard Sherman, who had a great season last year, but he's not getting any younger. And can he maintain that rate of play?
Yeah, I think Sherman, who's 32 years old, is probably the biggest question mark here. And obviously, I don't want to doubt him because he did come back from a serious injury about 2 or 3 years ago in Seattle. Came back, played all right with the 49ers in 2018, then very good last year. But we saw him get burned by Tyreek Hill a couple times in the Super Bowl. We saw him have trouble with Sammy Watkins. So I'm wondering at 32, 33 years old, I mean, how much longer can Sherman play like a top 10 cornerback in the NFL? And once that falls away, I know they have a great defensive front, but if you get rid of Richard Sherman, this secondary doesn't have a superstar cover guy. I mean, the next best corner is Witherspoon or maybe Jason Verrett, who's never healthy. You've got a bunch of question marks in that secondary, really outside of guys like Sherman. So once that piece falls away, your secondary suddenly starts looking more like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers unit than it does the San Francisco 49ers. So I think that's a huge question mark.
I thought you liked the Buccaneers defense.
Oh, the defensive front, yes. The secondary, not so much.
All right. Offensively, I think the guy that is most intriguing to me, who if he takes off, I think you're going to see Jimmy Garoppolo take off, and that's Deebo Samuel. I think he's the one player I'm really looking forward to this year because last year he caught 57 passes for 802 yards, 3 touchdowns, carried the ball 14 times for 159 yards. And I think it's incumbent on Shanahan to find different and even more ways to get the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and if we're going to give Shanahan this kind of title as a creative offensive play caller, he needs to find a lot of ways to use Deebo Samuel. I think they'll just be trying to get him the ball as much as possible. And you said he 802 receiving yards this past year, 159 rushing yards, 6 total touchdowns. He needs to find the end zone more often. I think he needs to get more targets just because this is now your guy moving forward. And they want him to be, well, this season they want him to be on a borderline Pro Bowl level pretty much because they need that star receiving option. You have George Kittle. I understand that. But let's be honest, George Kittle is not the same kind of player as Travis Kelce. He's not going to put 1,300, 1,400 receiving yards a year. He's a really good run blocker. He's going to be close to 1,000 yards. He might still be the best tight end in football, but he's not going to be a ridiculous yardage machine like someone like Travis Kelce might be. So for me, I think Deebo Samuel is huge, especially when you're talking about going vertical. I think this is a guy you want to use speed, and you want him to get him the ball and let him make plays.
Yeah, especially when this team, I think, will miss veteran Emmanuel Sanders. They drafted Brandon Aiyuk, a rookie receiver, late in the first round. What's your take on Aiyuk? Do you think this is a guy that can step in and play right away?
I think he could step in and play right away. I'm not sure he's going to be a guy who can step in and be an immediate contributor, though, in terms of sense, like really help him out. I know there's some abilities. He actually plays bigger than he is. He's only about 6 foot, but he looks much better in contested catch situations. My concern with him is speed, only a 4.5 40-yard dash. So speed and separation for him are the biggest concerns. I know they've had their eye on him. But supposedly they also were looking at N'Keal Harry last year, and that didn't really work out in New England for 1 year. So at the same point, there are concerns, and most of them come down to the speed and agility and the short area situations where I'm not sure he'll be able to separate from quicker corners. So that's my biggest issue with him. I would expect they slowly transition him in. We probably won't see a lot of him until week 5 or 6. But at the same point, I think he could contribute, yes. But is he going to be an immediate, helpful guy who's going to put up 700, 800 yards like Deebo Samuel last year? Probably not.
No, I think he's going to be a solid guy. I think you could have got a lot better pick. Yeah, I mean, T. Higgins, I think, to me, is a better pick than what Aiyuk is.
Yeah, no, I agree. There were other guys who I would have even gone for Michael Pittman Jr. I know there are concerns about him as well, but I think even taking a shot at him over Brandon Aiyuk, I think there's a possible for a larger return there, and certainly T. Higgins as well. So I was a little surprised when he went as high as he did. It was a 25th overall selection. But, they've gone with him. They think this is their guy, and who knows? Maybe he'll work well alongside Deebo Samuel, but I'm not betting on it in year 1.
Yeah, and I do think people overlook how good this offense really was last year. The defense always gets all the credit, but this offense, if you watch them against Green Bay, especially that first half or against Minnesota, they were very good. But you had a lot of zone running stuff here, and you've lost a little bit in the running game.
Yeah, there's some concerns here. You've traded left tackles Joe Staley for Trent Williams. You've lost, I forget his name. I'm trying to think how to say the last name. It's Mike Pearson just retired, I'm pretty sure, something like that. They had an offensive line who played a couple of snaps with them for guard last year in the interior who retired recently. And then at running back, you trade Matt Breida away. And you got not Tevin Coleman, you got Raheem Mostert, who just requested a trade recently. So you've got some concerns back here in your backfield now because if you potentially lose Raheem Mostert or if he refuses to play, that's the most efficient back arguably in the NFL last year in terms of yards per carry is walking away potentially. So there are some huge concerns here, and I'm not putting a lot of faith in guys like Weston Richburg at center to stay healthy. And I just don't know. You got Tom Compton at right guard. I just don't know if there's enough here. Maybe they fit well in your scheme, but at the same point, personnel-wise, this probably isn't as good of a line as it was last year.
I don't think they're as athletic as a line. How about that?
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And the problem with it, with the zone running scheme, they have to be athletic and they have to avoid injuries this year because they had some injuries last year that they overcame. I don't think they're as deep as what they were on the offensive line last year. So I think this is probably still in the top half of offensive lines in the NFL, but I don't think they're going to be as good as what they were last year.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so either. I don't think you have the personnel in the backfield to really help you out right now, especially like you'll probably have Raheem Mostert for the season, but if you don't, that's a huge blow. You still have him. You still have Tevin Coleman. Jerick McKinnon's supposedly finally healthy, so we'll see if he actually gets any playing time. But right now, I can see the running game taking a significant step back from where it was last year.
Yeah, and if the running game takes a step back, chances are the passing game will too, just because this offense runs off of that zone read, play action passing, everything that goes with that. So when we look at this, I think the only way the season can be a success for the 49ers is to win the whole thing. Because I think last year they had the best team and they blew it in the fourth quarter of that Super Bowl. But when I look at this, I don't think the offense is going to be quite as good. I don't think the defense is going to be quite as good. And as we always talk about the ifs, if Richard Sherman hasn't aged, if this guy can do this, if this guy does that, if Brandon Aiyuk, I think Aiyuk is a huge key here because they need a third guy. You've got George Kittle, one of the best tight ends in football. I think this roster is still good enough to make a run at going to the Super Bowl, but I don't think this team is going to win the NFC again.
No, I don't think so either. I think they've got a bunch of quality players on the field, but like you said, they were probably the most well-rounded team in the Super Bowl last year. They probably were more well-rounded than the Chiefs. You end up blowing. So you maintained Patrick Mahomes. You contained him for 3 quarters, and you just lost it in the fourth quarter. So they had that win and ended up giving it away. I think there's going to be a bit of a Super Bowl hangover. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. And going into the NFC, which is still a pretty stacked conference in football, I think they're going to have trouble. I think they're going to probably win. They probably win 10 games, but I think they're more in the 10 or the 11 to 9 win range, somewhere in that area, as opposed to actually winning 13 games. I don't see them coming out and dominating the way they did last year. I don't see them finishing with a top 2 or 3 seed.
All right. I still think they're a 10 or 11 win team. I think they easily make the playoffs. I think they'll battle Seattle for the division. I'm going to lean a little bit towards Seattle just because I think Seattle has improved a little bit more than the Niners. And I really like Russell Wilson. So with that all being said, is there any NFL news you want to talk about? I know the Washington Redskins now said they're going to retire their name, which makes it really entertaining to go on Washington Redskins fans' message boards because it seems like they're all keeping the name.
Yeah, they're pretty upset about it. So they haven't officially announced it. We have no idea what the name's going to be yet. They haven't announced anything. I thought we were going to have it at some point this afternoon, but we haven't gotten anything from that yet. Nothing else really. I mean, there's a report out there that remember when DeAndre Baker and Quentin Dunbar got arrested for supposedly armed robbery?
Yeah.
They had witnesses that came forward and said, oh, no, they didn't actually do anything. Well, apparently those witnesses were paid off to say that. So they could still be in deep legal trouble and potentially face large suspensions this coming season.
Well, actually, wouldn't that make it even worse legal trouble?
Yeah, if it gets revealed that you were paying off people for false testimony, yeah, it could be a fairly rough situation for those two guys, and they could end up both missing significant time this season. And I don't know what the legal ramifications for it would be, but I would assume it's not very good for either of those two.
No. All right. Anything else? Do we want to come back tomorrow? And I have 2 ideas for shows. We either do a state of the franchise or maybe do something like predicting one future first-time Pro Bowl player for each AFC team.
Yeah, we can do that one. That sounds like fun.
All right. We'll do that then. So we will be back tomorrow, 1, to talk about each AFC team and what player on their roster that hasn't been in the AFC Pro Bowl game yet. Maybe. I can tell you this with the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to pick Joe Burrow. So there we go. With the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't think they have anybody because I think from what I hear, Sam, they're thinking about folding up operations in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, it's a mess a little bit. Yeah.
I think in Pittsburgh, Devin Bush is the obvious selection.
Yeah, I think so too on the defense. I think for sure because I think he'll take a huge step forward. There are some minor concerns his rookie year, but I think he'll be there now. For sure.
All right, guys. Sam, you want to tell everybody where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Sam_Teets33. I'm constantly posting new articles, stats, polls, all that kind of stuff there, so feel free to go check me out.
All right, and make sure we are now live on Facebook, on our group page, and on YouTube through StreamYard, so make sure you check that out. Last night, me and Steve Risley did a Survive in Advance on whether college football should play their season again or not. And if you haven't heard it yet, you can go to Facebook and listen to it there. And our listens doubled anything I've ever done with Sam on viewers.
I think we got like 10K one time, didn't we?
I think 8,700, but me and Risley shows like 15 or 16,000 now. So
yeah,
I want to thank everybody who did listen to that show. But me and Sam will be back tomorrow, 1 o'clock. Make sure you check us out on YouTube or Facebook. We will be live at 1 o'clock Eastern. For now, for Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.